My name is Stephanie Patterson, 27 years old. At my sister's engagement party, 50 guests, champagne tower, string quartet, my father lifted his glass. To our successful daughter, he said, eyes on Olivia, our pride and joy. Then he turned to me, smirk barely hidden. And you? Still in love with that poor farmer? I kept eating, silent, because they didn't know the man beside me, the one they'd seated near the kitchen exit, the one they'd never bothered to ask about, had quietly shaped things they couldn't imagine. They didn't know what he'd built while they measured worth in law degrees and salary figures. And when my sister's future father-in-law stood up, face pale, and said, "Wait, that's you?" That's when 50 witnesses watched my parents' carefully constructed world shatter in real time. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where this really started. The Patterson family has been practicing law for 3 generations, since 1952 to be exact. My grandfather opened the firm in Philadelphia with a single office and a rotary phone. My father expanded it to 15 attorneys and a corner suite downtown. The waiting room has framed photographs of every Patterson lawyer who's ever worn the family name like armor. My grandfather in his pinstripe suit, my father accepting his Harvard law diploma, my sister Olivia at her Penn Law graduation, beaming beside our parents. I'm not in any of those photographs, not because I didn't graduate, not because I disappeared, but because at 19, when I told my parents I wanted nursing school instead of law school, something shifted. My mother looked at my father across the dinner table that night, her pearl bracelet catching the light, and said, "Mitchell, what will you tell the Harrisons?" The Harrisons were family friends, lawyers, naturally. My father didn't look up from his briefcase. "I'll tell them Stephanie is exploring options." Exploring options. That was the phrase that followed me for 8 years. I remember the first family gathering after I graduated from nursing school. I was 23. My uncle Raymond, a corporate attorney naturally, asked about the girls at Thanksgiving dinner. My father smiled, straightened his navy blue tie, the one he only wore when he wanted to make an impression, and launched into a 5-minute explanation of Olivia's position at the family firm, her cases, her trajectory toward junior partner. When Uncle Raymond turned to me, my father's smile tightened. "And you, Stephanie?" Raymond asked. "She's in healthcare," my father said quickly. Then he shifted topics to a merger case like I'd ceased to exist. I didn't say anything. What could I say? That I loved my work? That holding a patient's hand through their fear mattered more to me than billable hours? They'd already decided nursing wasn't a career, it was a phase. The real pattern, though, showed itself in smaller ways. Last Thanksgiving, 2024, my mother set the table with her usual precision. Olivia's place was directly across from my father, the seat of honor, linen napkin folded into a swan. Mine was at the corner near the kitchen door, paper napkin. During dinner, my mother asked Olivia about the Henderson case, her eyes bright with genuine interest. "Darling, tell us how you handled the cross-examination." Olivia talked for 15 minutes. My parents listened like she was delivering a TED talk. Then my mother looked at me. "Stephanie, could you pass the salt?" That was it. That was my conversational contribution that night. After dinner, I stood in the kitchen washing dishes, alone, as usual, and heard my mother's voice drift from the living room. You really make us proud, sweetheart, she told Olivia. You know that, don't you? I turned off the water, stood there with soap suds dripping from my hands, waiting to hear if she'd say my name next. She didn't. But the moment that crystallized everything, the moment I realized they weren't just disappointed, they were ashamed, happened 8 months ago. I won an award, Nurse of the Year at Philadelphia General. They gave it to one nurse annually out of 320 staff members. I'd worked 60-hour weeks, 12-hour night shifts, held the hands of dying patients, advocated for families who had no one else. The ceremony was on a Thursday evening, 1 hour. I sent the invitation to the family group chat 3 weeks in advance. My father replied, Stephanie, I have obligations that night. You understand. The next day, he attended a law firm gala where Olivia gave a 10-minute speech on pro bono work. I saw the photos on his Facebook, him in his tuxedo, beaming beside my sister. At my ceremony, I stood on stage alone, held my plaque, looked out at the audience, and saw the empty seats I'd saved. I took a photo with the award afterward and sent it to the family chat. No one responded. Not that night, not the next day, not ever. I kept that invitation on my refrigerator for 3 weeks. Cream-colored cardstock with gold lettering. Please join us in honoring Stephanie Patterson. Every time I opened the fridge for milk or leftover pasta, I saw it. A reminder that even my accomplishments weren't worth their time. So when people ask me why I didn't tell my parents more about Daniel, why I kept him separate from that world, the answer is simple. They never asked. And even if they had, I'm not sure they would have listened. Have you ever felt invisible in your own family? Not because you did something wrong, but because you chose something different. Drop a comment if you know what that's like. Because what happened next made me realize I wasn't alone in that feeling. My sister, Olivia, is 30 years old. She's beautiful, brilliant, works 80-hour weeks at the Patterson firm, and earns $158,000 a year as a criminal defense attorney. She drives a BMW, wears Armani suits, and can argue a motion to suppress evidence in her sleep. She also lives in a cage. I don't mean that cruelly. I mean it factually. Every decision Olivia makes gets filtered through a single question. What would Dad say? I remember sitting with her at a coffee shop last spring. She was debating whether to accept a junior partner offer. Do you think I should take it? She asked, stirring her latte with mechanical precision. What do you want? I asked. She looked at me like I'd asked her to solve a calculus problem in ancient Greek. I I don't know. What would Dad say? I'm not asking Dad. I'm asking you. She set down her spoon, stared into her coffee. I guess I'd have to ask him. That's when I realized. Olivia had never been allowed to want something just because it made her happy. Every achievement, every choice, every milestone had been measured against the Patterson legacy. She was successful, yes, but she'd never been free. Me? I was free the moment they gave up on controlling me. I work as a registered nurse at Philadelphia General. I make $68,000 a year. I work night shifts, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., 3 or 4 times a week. 12 hours on my feet. 60 patients a week, give or take. I wear scrubs that smell like antiseptic and sneakers with worn down soles because comfort matters more than fashion when you're walking 6 miles per shift. My parents look at those sneakers like they're evidence of failure. But here's what they don't see: I chose this work because it matters. Because when an 83-year-old woman is alone and scared at 2 a.m., and I sit beside her bed and hold her hand through the pain, she looks at me and says, "Thank you. You saw me." Being seen. That's what nursing gave me. Ironic, isn't it? The career that made me invisible to my family made me visible to strangers. 5 days before Olivia's engagement party, she texted me, "Olivia, I know Mom and Dad are being difficult about Daniel. I'm sorry." Me, "You don't have to apologize for them." Olivia, "I just want this weekend to go smoothly." I stared at that message for a long time. What she really meant was, please don't make waves. Please don't make them uncomfortable. Please just stay small and quiet so I can have my perfect party. Me, "I wasn't planning to." Olivia, "Thanks. Love you. Love you." She meant it. I knew she did. But love without action is just a word, and Olivia had never once stood up for me when it mattered. So no, I wasn't angry at my sister. I was sad for her, because she was so busy being the daughter they wanted that she'd forgotten to figure out who she actually was. And the worst part? I used to be jealous of her. Used to wish I could be the one they bragged about, the one they introduced first, the one whose accomplishments made them light up. But sitting there reading her text, "Love you," I realized something. I didn't want their pride anymore. I just wanted them to see me as enough, not as a lawyer, not as a failure, just as Stephanie. But that's not how this story was going to go. I met Daniel Shaw 18 months ago at the Wayne County Farmers Market. It was a Saturday morning in late summer. I'd gone to buy tomatoes and fresh bread, and I ended up standing in front of his booth for 20 minutes talking about the purpose of work. He sold organic beef from his family farm, 150 acres in rural Pennsylvania, 4 generations of Shaws raising cattle on the same land. His hands were calloused. His flannel shirt had a small tear near the collar. He smiled when he talked to customers, especially the elderly women who asked about his grandfather's grass feeding techniques. "Most people ask what I do for money," he said that first day, handing me a package of ground beef wrapped in brown paper. "You asked what I do that matters. That's rare." I looked at the wooden table he stood behind. Simple, worn. A small painted sign read, "Shaw Family Farm, established 1924. "I'm a nurse," I said. "I get asked about my salary a lot too, like that's the only thing that defines the job." He nodded, smiled. "You get it then." We exchanged numbers, started texting, had our first real date 2 weeks later at a diner that served pancakes the size of dinner plates. He told me about the farm, about choosing to come back after college instead of taking a corporate job in Pittsburgh, about how his grandfather taught him that legacy isn't about money. It's about what you leave behind for people who come after you. I told him about my family, about the law firm dynasty, about feeling like a disappointment because I'd chosen nursing over courtrooms. Daniel listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said something I've never forgotten. "You don't have to explain them to me. I know what it's like to be measured by the wrong scale." I wanted to ask what he meant. Who had measured him? But he shifted the conversation, and I let it go. Some people carry quiet pain, and you don't push. Over the next 18 months, I learned a few things about Daniel Shaw. He was humble in a way that felt almost deliberate. He didn't talk about money, didn't name drop, didn't show off. He drove a 10-year-old Ford pickup, wore the same 3 flannel shirts in rotation, lived in a small farmhouse with his dog, a border collie named Iris. But there were inconsistencies. Small things that didn't quite fit the poor farmer narrative my parents had constructed without ever meeting him. Once, I saw an email notification on his phone. Re. Grant Proposal Review. Shaw Foundation Board Meeting. Why is someone emailing you about a foundation board meeting? I asked. Casual. He shrugged. Old project. Nothing exciting. Another time, I noticed he had a MacBook Pro, brand new, the expensive kind with the extra RAM. Not exactly standard equipment for someone supposedly scraping by. And then there was the way he spoke. Not just educated. Lots of people are educated, but precise. Thoughtful. Like someone who'd spent time in rooms where words carried weight. You ever think about doing something other than farming? I asked once, lying on a blanket in his field, watching clouds. Every day, he said quietly. But this is what matters to me: the work, the land, doing something real. You sound like you've done something else before. He smiled. Maybe. I didn't push. Because here's the truth: I didn't care if Daniel was hiding something. I cared that he saw me, that when I talked about my worst shifts, the patients I couldn't save, the families I couldn't comfort, he listened like it mattered. My parents never once asked about him beyond the basics. You're still dating that farmer? My mother asked over the phone in early October. His name is Daniel. Right, Daniel. Is it serious? It's been over a year, Mom. Silence. Then, well, you know best, I suppose. That was it. That was the extent of her interest. My father was worse. At a family dinner in November, he asked, "What does this Daniel person do for a living?" "He runs a farm, raises cattle." My father raised his eyebrows. "And that's sustainable? Financially?" "He manages." "I see." He sipped his wine. The conversation ended. They never asked where the farm was, how many acres, what Daniel studied in college, whether he had family, whether he made me happy. They saw a farmer and made their judgment. And that judgment was not good enough for a Patterson. So when the invitation to Olivia's engagement party arrived, I already knew how this would go. The invitation came in the mail 3 weeks before the party. Thick cardstock, embossed lettering, the works. Olivia had handwritten a note at the bottom. "Hope you can make it, and bring Daniel!" Exclamation points, like she was excited, like this was going to be fun. The family group chat told a different story. Mom: "Stephanie, are you bringing a guest?" Me: "Yes, Daniel." Mom: "I see. Please remind him about the dress code." Dress code. Cocktail attire. As if Daniel didn't know how to dress himself. Dad: "Cocktail attire. No exceptions." He didn't say hello, didn't ask how I was. Just rules, standards, control. I didn't respond. What was the point? But 10 days before the party, I found out exactly how they really felt. I'd stopped by my parents' house to pick up a dress my mother insisted I try on. something she'd bought that she thought would be more appropriate than my own choices. While she was upstairs looking for it, I stood in the living room waiting. That's when I heard her voice. On the phone, in the kitchen, the door was half open. About the 2 seats for Stephanie Patterson and her guest, she said, voice crisp and businesslike. Please place them at table 9, near the exit. No need for elaborate name cards. They won't be staying long anyway. I froze. And for the stage introductions during the toast, just focus on Olivia and Philip. We don't need to complicate the narrative. Complicate the narrative. I stood there, hand on the banister, feeling something cold settle in my chest. Not anger, not even hurt, just clarity. They weren't disappointed in me, they were ashamed, and they were actively trying to hide me. My mother came downstairs a minute later, smiling, holding a navy blue dress. Oh, good, you're here. Try this on. I looked at her, at the pearl bracelet on her wrist, the one she only wore when she wanted to impress people, at her perfectly styled hair, at the smile that didn't reach her eyes. Did you find it? I asked. The dress? Yes, right here. No, the seating chart. For the party. Her smile faltered, just for a second. Then she recovered. Oh, we're still finalizing details. You know how it is. I took the dress. Table 9? She blinked. What? You're seating us at table 9, near the exit. Her face went carefully blank. Stephanie, there are 50 guests. We have to seat people somewhere. Near the kitchen, away from the VIPs. That's not. She stopped, rearranged her expression. It's just logistics, sweetheart. I nodded slowly, handed the dress back. I'll wear my own. But this one is. I'll wear my own, I said again, quietly, firmly. I left without trying it on. That night, I sat in my apartment kitchen, staring at the invitation on my counter. Daniel was at the farm, but we'd planned to talk later. When he called, I told him about the seating, about the voicemail. Do you want to skip it? He asked. No judgment, just the question. I thought about it, really thought about it. No, I said finally. I need to go. You don't have to prove anything to them. I'm not trying to prove anything. I'm trying to say goodbye. Goodbye? To the version of myself that still hoped they'd change. Silence on the line. Then Daniel said, Then we'll go. Together. And I knew, whatever happened at that party, I wouldn't be alone. But I couldn't have predicted what actually happened. None of us could. The Whitman estate is the kind of place people rent when they want to make an impression. Stone facade, manicured gardens, floor to ceiling windows overlooking a private courtyard. My parents had booked it for the evening, 7 p.m. to midnight, and spared no expense. String quartet in the corner, 3-tier champagne tower, 50 guests in cocktail attire mingling under Edison bulb string lights. Daniel and I arrived at exactly 7. He wore a clean white button down and dark slacks. I wore a simple navy dress, the one my mother had said was fine, with a tone that meant it wasn't. My parents stood near the entrance, greeting guests. My mother in a champagne-colored gown, pearl bracelet glinting. My father in a tailored suit, posture perfect. When they saw me, my mother's smile tightened. Oh, you're here. Not, I'm glad you're here. Not, you look nice. Just, you're here. She looked at Daniel. And Daniel, correct? She said his name like she was reading it off a name tag. Yes, ma'am, Daniel said, extending his hand. She shook it briefly, didn't meet his eyes. My father nodded in our direction, one quick dip of his chin, then turned to greet the couple behind us with actual warmth. Henry! Sarah, so glad you could make it. Come in, come in. Judge Henry Ashford and his wife, Olivia's future in-laws. My father clapped the judge on the shoulder like they were old friends. Daniel and I walked past them into the main room. Well, Daniel said quietly, that was welcoming. I almost laughed. Almost. We found the seating chart near the bar. Elegant calligraphy on a gold-framed board. Table 1, Olivia Patterson, Philip Ashford, Judge Henry Ashford, Sarah Ashford, Dr. Mitchell Patterson, Judge Laura Patterson, the VIPs. Tables 2 through 7, a mix of attorneys, a few doctors, some business owners, people my parents wanted to impress. Table 8, distant relatives who'd flown in from Ohio. Table 9, Stephanie Patterson, Daniel Shaw, and two other couples I vaguely recognized as Olivia's college friends she hadn't spoken to in years. Near the exit, I murmured. Daniel read the chart. His jaw tightened slightly, but he didn't say anything, just put his hand on my lower back, gentle, grounding, and guided me toward our table. Table 9 was exactly where my mother had described, far right corner, closest to the kitchen doors, near the hallway that led to the bathrooms and the back exit. No floral centerpiece like tables 1 through 7, just a small candle and some greenery. Our name cards were simple white cardstock. At table 1, the name cards had gold trim and little calligraphy flourishes. We sat down. Daniel pulled out my chair. The two other couples at our table glanced at us, smiled politely, then went back to their conversations. From where I sat, I could see table 1 clearly. My parents, laughing with Judge Ashford, Olivia and Philip, holding hands, glowing. My mother leaned in to say something to Sarah Ashford, and they both laughed, the kind of laugh that means someone feels included. I looked down at my empty plate. You okay? Daniel asked quietly. Yeah. You don't look okay. I'm fine, I said. And then, because he deserved honesty, I knew it would be like this. But knowing and seeing are different. He reached under the table, took my hand, squeezed once. Across the room, two men in suits, attorneys based on their conversation volume, stood near table 7. One of them glanced toward us, then leaned toward his companion. I couldn't hear the words, but I saw his lips move. That's the younger daughter? The other man looked, shrugged. I thought there was only Olivia. No, there's two. She's different path, you know. What does she do? Nurse, I think, and dating a farmer. A pause, then a chuckle. Well, every family has one, I suppose. They turned away, sipping their champagne like they hadn't just summarized my entire existence in 4 sentences. Daniel's hand tightened on mine. He'd heard it too. Ignore them, I whispered. I'm not the one they're dismissing. I've had practice. The lights dimmed slightly. The string quartet finished their song. A man in a tuxedo, The MC my parents had hired stepped up to a microphone near table 1. "Good evening, everyone," he said, voice smooth and practiced. "If you'll please take your seats, we're about to begin." 50 people settled into their chairs. The room quieted. And that's when I saw it. Judge Henry Ashford, seated at table 1, glanced across the room. His eyes swept past tables 2, 3, 4, and stopped at table 9, at Daniel. The judge's expression shifted, just slightly, a small furrow between his brows, like he was trying to place a face he recognized but couldn't quite remember where from. Daniel noticed. I saw him notice. He kept his face neutral, but his posture straightened slightly. Judge Ashford stared for another second, then turned back to his wife, murmured something I couldn't hear, but he kept glancing back, 3 times in the next 2 minutes. "Do you know him?" I whispered to Daniel. "We've met," Daniel said quietly. "When?" "A while ago." Before I could ask more, the MC spoke again. "And now, to introduce the families of our guests of honor, please welcome Dr. Mitchell Patterson and Judge Laura Patterson, parents of the bride." Applause. My parents stood, waving graciously. The MC continued. "Dr. Patterson is a renowned attorney here in Philadelphia, and Judge Patterson serves on the regional court. Together they've built a legacy of excellence in law." More applause. "And now," the MC said, "let's meet the woman of the hour, Olivia Patterson, brilliant defense attorney and the pride of the Patterson family." The pride. Singular. The MC didn't mention me. Olivia stood, blushing, as people clapped. Philip kissed her cheek. And her fiancé, Philip Ashford, a rising star in the U.S. Attorney's Office. More applause. The MC gestured toward Judge Ashford. And of course, Philip's father, the Honorable Judge Henry Ashford, whose career in federal court speaks for itself. Standing ovation for the judge. He smiled, humble, waved it away. The MC wrapped up. What a remarkable gathering of accomplished individuals. Now, Dr. Patterson has a few words. My father stood, straightened his tie, picked up his champagne glass, and 50 people turned to listen. My father has always known how to command a room. It's a skill honed over 30 years of closing arguments and client dinners. He stood at table 1, glass raised, smile warm and genuine as he looked at Olivia. "First," he began, "I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. 50 of our closest friends and family gathered to celebrate a truly special occasion." He paused. Let the room settle into attentive silence. "Today, I stand here as a father," he continued. "And if you'd asked me 30 years ago what I hoped for my children, I would have said, I hope they understand what it means to build something meaningful, to honor a legacy, to contribute to something greater than themselves." He looked at Olivia. His voice softened. Olivia has always understood that. From the day she chose law school, to the day she joined our firm, to today, watching her commit to a man who shares those same values, I have never been more proud. People murmured in agreement. Someone said, "Hear, hear." My father's smile widened. "To our successful daughter, our pride and joy." He raised his glass higher. 50 people raised theirs in response, and then his eyes slid to me. The smile stayed. but something behind it shifted, something colder. I also want to acknowledge, he said slowly, that every family is different. Every child chooses their own path. The room went quieter. People sensed the shift in tone. My younger daughter, Stephanie, he continued, gesturing vaguely in my direction, chose a different path. She's a nurse, a respectable profession, certainly. A pause, just long enough to let the word respectable hang in the air like a participation trophy. She works hard. I'm sure she finds it fulfilling. Another pause. Someone coughed. The sound echoed. My father's smirk was so subtle that if you weren't looking for it, you'd miss it. But I saw it. Olivia saw it. And from the way Daniel's hand tightened on his fork, he saw it too. And Stephanie is in a relationship, my father added, his tone shifting into something almost amused. With a farmer, if I'm not mistaken. A few people chuckled, polite, nervous. And you, Stephanie? He said, looking directly at me now. Still in love with that poor farmer? The question landed like a slap. 50 people turned to look at me. I didn't move, didn't flinch, just kept my fork in my hand, my face carefully neutral. My father didn't wait for an answer. He turned back to the room, raising his glass higher. I've learned over the years, he said, voice smooth again, that some paths lead to success. He paused, let the word hang, and some paths lead to personal contentment. He smiled, at me, the kind of smile that's meant to look kind but feels like pity. Today we celebrate the path of success. To Olivia, our legacy in action, our pride and joy. 50 glasses raised, 50 people toasted. My sister's face was red, not from happiness, from shame. Philip looked uncomfortable, shifting in his seat. But my parents? They looked satisfied. The room erupted in applause. People stood, clinked glasses. My father sat down, accepting handshakes and pats on the back. And I sat at table 9, staring at my untouched salmon, feeling 50 pairs of eyes on me. One tear started to form. I blinked it away before it could fall. Daniel leaned close. We can leave. No. Stephanie, I'm fine. I wasn't fine, but I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. I cut a piece of salmon, put it in my mouth, chewed, swallowed. Across the room, someone laughed. The conversation resumed. The moment passed, except it didn't, because Daniel set down his napkin and stood up. The table beside us went quiet first, then the one beside that. A ripple of silence spreading outward as people noticed the man at table 9, the poor farmer in the flannel shirt, standing in the middle of my father's toast. My father looked over, frowning. Is there a problem? Daniel didn't answer right away. He just stood there, hands at his sides, calm and steady. And then Judge Henry Ashford's face went completely white. He stood up slowly, stared at Daniel like he'd seen a ghost. Wait, the judge said, voice barely above a whisper. Daniel Shaw? The room went dead silent. Is that you? Judge Ashford stepped away from table 1, walked toward us. Every eye in the room followed him. My father stood. Henry, is everything all right? The judge ignored him. He stopped 3 feet from our table, staring at Daniel like he was trying to solve an equation that didn't make sense. Daniel Shaw, the judge said again, louder this time. I didn't expect to see you here. Daniel gave a small, polite nod. Your Honor? Does the Foundation Board know you're attending public events again? Foundation, Board. The words hung in the air. My mother stood now, too. Henry, do you know this man? Judge Ashford turned to her slowly. His expression wasn't warm. Know him? Laura, this is Daniel Shaw, chairman of the Shaw Family Foundation. Silence. My father blinked. Chairman of what? The Shaw Family Foundation, Judge Ashford repeated, his voice taking on a tone usually reserved for explaining things to children. One of the largest charitable trusts in the Midwest, $1, $6 billion in assets, 60 education programs across 18 states. Someone gasped. I think it was one of the attorneys at table 7. Judge Ashford kept going. Daniel and I have worked together for 6 years. I co-founded the foundation with his grandfather back in 1998. My father's face had gone pale. I didn't know. No, the judge said flatly. You didn't ask. My mother looked at me, then at Daniel, then back at the judge. But he said he was a farmer. He is a farmer, Judge Ashford said. He runs the original Shaw family farm, 150 acres, been in his family for 4 generations. He looked at Daniel. But he's also one of the most principled men I know. Turned down 3 corporate board positions last year alone because he wanted to focus on the foundation's rural education initiatives. A woman at table 4, someone I vaguely recognized as a fellow attorney, spoke up. Shaw Foundation? They're the ones who funded the Rural Nursing Scholarship Program, aren't they? Judge Ashford nodded. Among other things. Last month, Daniel committed $12 million to expand that program. He believes nurses are the backbone of the healthcare system. He glanced at me. Seems he sees value where others don't. The room was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. My father finally found his voice. Daniel, we had no idea. Daniel looked at him, calm, unflinching. With respect, Dr. Patterson, he said quietly, I was never asked. In 18 months, no one in this family asked what I did, what I cared about, or who I was. You saw a farmer and decided that was all you needed to know. He paused. Let that sink in. That says more about how you measure people than it does about me. No one moved. Judge Ashford spoke again, his tone sharp now. Mitchell, 2 weeks ago, I invited Daniel to sit on the Federal Court Advisory Council. Do you know what he said? My father shook his head mutely. He said no. He told me he wanted to focus on the Foundation's new rural healthcare initiative instead. The man has turned down more prestigious positions than most people will ever be offered. The judge's expression hardened. And you, in front of 50 people, you humiliated your own daughter for dating him. My mother's hand went to her mouth. Olivia stood, tears streaming down her face. Stephanie, she said, voice breaking. I'm so sorry. Philip stood too. He looked at his father, then at my parents. I think, he said carefully, that we need to pause this evening. But Judge Ashford wasn't done. You want to know what Daniel and I were working on last month? He asked my father. We were reviewing grant applications for rural hospitals. You know what he told me? He said, the people doing the real work, the nurses, the aides, the staff no one sees, they deserve our support. They're the ones holding the system together. He looked at me. Stephanie, I believe your father just called your career personally fulfilling, like it was a consolation prize. I couldn't speak, couldn't move. Daniel stepped forward, addressed the room. I didn't come here tonight to make a scene, he said. His voice was calm, but it carried. I came here because Stephanie asked me to, because she's kind and loyal, even to people who don't see her. He turned to my parents. You spent 18 months measuring me without ever asking a single question. You decided I wasn't good enough based on my boots and my truck, and that's your loss. But what you did to Stephanie, dismissing her career, her choices, her worth, that's something I can't ignore. My father opened his mouth, closed it. She holds people's hands when they're dying, Daniel continued. She advocates for families who have no one else. She works 12-hour shifts on her feet and comes home exhausted and still finds time to care about people. And you reduced all of that to personal contentment, like it was a failure. The silence stretched. Then my mother spoke, voice trembling. Stephanie, we didn't mean. Yes, you did, I said. It was the first time I'd spoken since my father's toast. Everyone turned to look at me. I stood, slowly. My legs shook, but I stood. You meant every word, I said. You've been saying it for 8 years. Maybe not out loud, but in every decision. Every time you seated me away from the important people. Every time you forgot to ask about my work. Every time you introduced Olivia first, and then paused before mentioning me. My mother's tears started to fall. I'm not angry, I said, and I meant it. I'm just done. Done hoping you'll see me. Done shrinking myself to make you comfortable. I looked at Daniel. He nodded. We're leaving, I said, and we walked out. 50 people watched us go. No one tried to stop us. 3 days after the party, my phone rang. Olivia. I almost didn't answer. But something, maybe habit, maybe curiosity, made me pick up. Steph, she said. Her voice was hoarse, like she'd been crying. Can we talk? About what? About everything. About mom and dad. About what happened. I sat down on my couch. Okay. Philip wants to postpone the wedding. I blinked. What? He said, her voice cracked. He said he can't marry into a family that humiliates people like that. He said if mom and dad don't make it right, he doesn't want to be part of it. Olivia, his dad is furious, Steph. Judge Ashford called Dad yesterday and told him he's withdrawing from the legal advisory board they're both on. He said he can't associate with someone who lacks basic human decency. I closed my eyes. And that's not all, Olivia continued. Two of Dad's clients pulled their contracts. They said, God, Steph, they said they can't trust a man who treats his own daughter like that. How much? How much what? How much did he lose? Olivia was quiet for a moment. About $1.2 million a year in retainer fees. I let out a long breath. Mom's not doing any better, Olivia added. Two of the judges she works with have been distant. She got uninvited from the Women's Legal Society luncheon next month. I didn't ask for any of this. I know, but it's happening anyway. Because what they did was wrong, and people saw it. I didn't know what to say. Steph, Olivia said softly, I should have stood up for you a long time ago. I'm sorry. You're sorry now because there are consequences. No, I mean, yes, but not just because of that. I'm sorry because you were right. They've been awful to you. And I let it happen because it was easier than fighting them. I heard the truth in her voice, the regret. What do you want me to do, Olivia? I want you to let them apologize. Do they want to apologize? Or do they want to fix their reputation? Silence. That's what I thought, I said. They're scared, Steph. They've lost clients, lost respect. Dad sits in his office every night staring at his phone like he's waiting for more bad news. Mom cries in the bathroom when she thinks no one's listening. And you want me to feel bad for them? No, I want you to give them a chance to make it right. I thought about that. About whether people who'd spent 8 years dismissing me deserved a chance. If they want to talk, I said finally, they can call me, but I'm not going to make this easy. And I'm not going to pretend everything's fine just to make them comfortable. Okay, Olivia whispered. Okay. We hung up. 2 days later, my mother called. Stephanie, she said. No preamble. Can you come to the house? Your father and we need to talk to you. About what? About everything. About what happened. About us. I paused. Do you want to talk because you understand what you did wrong, or because you're facing consequences? The silence on the other end of the line stretched for 10 seconds. Then my mother said, Both. I'm not going to lie to you. We're facing consequences. But your father and we've been talking, really talking, and we realize we failed you. You think? I know this doesn't fix anything, but please, come over. Let us try. I looked at Daniel, who was sitting across from me at my kitchen table. He raised his eyebrows. Your call. I'll come, I said, but this time I speak, and you listen. Okay, my mother said. Okay. I drove to my parents' house on a Tuesday evening. Daniel offered to come, but I told him this was something I needed to do alone. The house looked the same as always. Brick facade, manicured lawn, the kind of place that screams successful family lives here. My mother opened the door before I could knock. Thank you for coming, she said. I stepped inside. My father was sitting in the living room, the same living room where those framed photographs hung. 3 generations of Patterson lawyers. Still no photo of me. Olivia was there too. She gave me a small, sad smile. We sat. No one spoke for what felt like an hour, but was probably only 10 seconds. Then my father cleared his throat. Stephanie, he said, your mother and we didn't know. Didn't know what? I asked. That Daniel was someone important. I shook my head. That's the problem, Dad. You measured him before you knew him, just like you measured me. He flinched. You looked at his boots and his truck and decided he wasn't worth your time, I continued. You never asked what he did, what he cared about, whether he made me happy. You just saw a farmer and decided that meant failure. My mother wiped her eyes. You're right. I know I'm right. I've known for 8 years. We thought. My father stopped, started again. I thought if I pushed you hard enough, you'd become the version of yourself I'd imagined. A lawyer, successful, part of the legacy. But I'm not a lawyer. No, you're not. He looked at me, really looked at me. And I'm sorry. The words hung in the air. Are you sorry because you lost clients? I asked. Or because you hurt me? Both, he said quietly. I can't separate the two. I'm sorry for both. I nodded. Here's what's going to happen. If you want to fix this, we're doing family therapy. 8 weeks, one session a week. And in the first session, I'm going to talk about 27 years of feeling invisible, about every time you chose Olivia over me, every time you dismissed my work, every time you made me feel like I wasn't enough. My mother's face crumpled. And you're going to listen, I said. No interruptions, no defenses, no, but we didn't mean it that way. Just listen. My father nodded. Okay. And if you can't commit to that, if you can't sit in a room and hear how much you hurt me, then we're done. I'll be polite at family events. I'll send birthday cards. But that's it. We'll do it, my mother said quickly. We'll do whatever it takes. I looked at Olivia. She was crying silently. And you, I said to her, you need to figure out who you are outside of their expectations, because you've spent 30 years being the perfect daughter, and I'm not sure you even know what you actually want. She nodded. I know. I stood up. I'll see you next week. The therapist's name is Dr. Brennan. I already booked the first session. I walked to the door. Stephanie, my father called. I turned. I'm proud of you, he said. I should have said that a long time ago, but I'm saying it now. I'm proud of you. I didn't respond, just nodded, and left. Daniel was waiting in his truck outside. When I got in, he asked, How do you feel? Free, I said. For the first time in my life, I feel free. He smiled, started the engine. As we drove away, I looked back at the house one more time, and I realized something. I didn't need them to see my worth anymore, because I finally saw it myself. So here's what I learned from all of this. Worth isn't measured in salary. It's not measured in job titles or law degrees or how many people know your name. It's measured in how you treat people when no one's watching. Daniel taught me that. He'd built a life of meaning, quietly, humbly, while my parents were busy measuring success in dollar signs and prestige. And me? I spent 8 years trying to earn love from people who'd made up their minds about me before I'd even had a chance. But I'm done with that now. My parents and I are in therapy. Some weeks are hard. Some weeks we make progress. I don't know if we'll ever have the relationship I once wanted, but I've learned that wanting something doesn't mean I'm owed it. Olivia postponed her wedding. Not canceled. Postponed. She and Philip are working through what it means to build a marriage with a foundation of honesty instead of appearances. And Daniel? He's still Daniel, still farming, still running the foundation, still refusing to let wealth define him. We're still together. 18 months turned into 2 years, maybe more. He asked me the other day, Do you regret going to that party? I thought about it. about the humiliation, the toast, the moment everything fell apart in front of 50 people. No, I said, because it forced the truth into the open. And sometimes that's the only way things can change. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, if you've ever been measured by the wrong scale, I want you to know something. You're not alone, and your worth isn't up for debate. It just is. Thanks for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if you want to hear what happened at our first therapy session, because trust me, it was intense, stick around for the next one. Until then, remember, the people who truly see you don't need convincing. Peace.